Federal agencies are being given the order to ban the box. President Obama says the agencies can no longer ask prospective employees about criminal convictions on job applications. The president, no doubt, trying to cement his legacy as he nears the end of his 7th year in office. We wanted to discuss this and more with Ben Ferguson, CNN political commentator and host of The Ben Ferguson Show. Marc Lamont is here with us as well, CNN political commentator and host on BET News. I feel like you two aren't going to agree on much, but I think we'll indulge ourselves anyway. What say you? We got a good, robust debate. You love one another, and I love you both. All right, so let's first talk about this ban the box aspect, the idea of removing criminal convictions from job applications. I'm going to go out on a limb and say, Ben Ferguson, you don't support this.
No, I think it's a pipe dream. I think it's a legacy builder, and I think the federal government should not be used as Barack Obama's own, political experience or idea, when the reality is employers need to know who they're hiring.
What about second chances? And I've paid my debt to society, Ben.
I'm okay with second chances, and that can be up to the discretion of the individual that's hiring. But to come out and say, we're going to ban the box and anything negative you've ever done in your past will never come up in a possibility in the future of affecting you is unrealistic. We teach children all the time. Your actions can cause consequences, good and bad. And if you're a citizen that does a good job, goes to school, you're going to get a better job. If you're out there committing crimes, it can affect you in a negative way. That's just the world we live in. Okay,
Mark, what about you? What do you think? That employers and the public need to know?
Well, to say it's just the world we live in, it doesn't have to be the world we live in. We can make changes to the world we live in. One way to do that is by banning the box. Second, it's not Barack Obama's personal, political or ideological laboratory. He's not guessing if this works. This isn't a pipe dream. We've seen states ban the box all around the country, my own home state of Pennsylvania being one of them. And what we've seen is that it hasn't had any negative impact on hiring. It hasn't led to increased criminality among employers. And lastly, Ben is misrepresenting the facts here, I'm sure by accident, but he's suggesting somehow that no one is accountable and that employers somehow don't have access, and that somehow employers don't have access to people's backgrounds. For important jobs and security jobs, you still can do background checks. If I'm going to be the head of a security company, if I'm going to go into some sort of trading, if I'm going to do all sorts of jobs, media jobs even, they can still do a background check. So it's not as if employers don't get to find out whether their security guard is an axe murderer. They just don't have to look at an application.
Wait, I want to ask, there's more things to talk about, because we also know that starting this past Friday, thousands of federal inmates were released from prison due to a reconsideration on sentences against drug criminals, basically low-level drug offenses, some 6,100 prisoners totally, and we should point out mostly Hispanic and African-American men incarcerated for drug trafficking crimes are being let out. The president, and we'll listen to his soundbite, insists this is not about releasing violent criminals. Listen to him last night.
I've said repeatedly, if you've got violent criminals out there, they need to be incapacitated. They need to be taken off the streets. And nobody's more invested than I am in continuing the trend towards reduced crime.
So why not, Ben? Why not release these low-level drug criminals?
Because not all of them are low level, as the president is implying. I talked yesterday to 2 different prosecutors that said about 70% of the cases that they have that deal with drug trafficking are usually pled down into lower deals. Many times we wouldn't even know if that person who's in prison was in prison for a weapons charge, for example. And the other thing is, when you traffic drugs, it's not a victimless crime. And you may say, oh, well, it's not that big of a deal. They're just pushing drugs. They're ruining people's lives and communities' lives by pushing these drugs. It's not a victimless crime. The people that get addicted to these drugs while they're making money, that is a victim who should be represented in the courts. Those are not people that we should look at as,
Mark.
They stole a candy bar at a grocery store.
The only victim is a straw man that Ben is beating up on. No one argues that drugs is a victimless crime.
It's not a straw man. Someone that gets addicted to drugs is a child.
Ben, let him finish.
Yeah, but Ben, no one has come on television or in a public policy forum or a press conference or a briefing and said that drugs are harmless or a victimless crime. That you're disputing an argument that no one is making. The argument is that we compound the damage done to being done to communities when we keep people incarcerated for longer sentences, for excessive sentences. It costs taxpayers money. It's criminogenic. In other words, you go to prison and you become a worse criminal or a better criminal. You don't come back out in society a better person. And most importantly, there are studies, there's evidence, there's, I don't know, data that shows that when you let people out in these types of programs, crime doesn't go up. In fact, in 2011, when 30,000 people were let out, guess what? Crime went down.
So, Ben, what do we do? Do you not agree that there isn't a prison overcrowding problem?
I think there's an overcrowding problem, but I also think part of the problem is we put people in and we let them out so quickly that it doesn't seem like it's a real place for people to actually go when they do commit crimes. I'll give you an example. It's not actually funny, Mark. If you talk to somebody that's been addicted to drug or watched a kid die from an OD from one of these drug pushers that you're letting out of prison,
you keep pulling out
funny to their family at all.
Dare story.
No,
no one's laughing at that.
It's not a dare story. It's reality. But I'll give you a great example. The individual that robbed me, who had been in prison 3 times before for pushing drugs, 2 of them were violent offenses, and they were both pled down.
But they're not going to let that person out of jail.
That's not true. Okay. The individual did not have the gun crime on their record when it was pled down. So when you go in and you say that individuals that we're letting out are nonviolent offenders, if you talk to the prosecutors, they're saying it's not that simple. Many times, 70%, as prosecutors told me yesterday, they plea the deal down so it looks like the
Mark,
individual is a nonviolent
20-second rebuttal.
offender.
Go ahead.
Okay, real quick. One, that 70% number is not backed by data. That's Ben's anecdotal evidence. I just want to be clear to the people in America that that's not a fact.
Talk to DAs.
I do, but that's not data.
Quickly,
A bunch of anecdotes doesn't make data. But the bigger point here is that I was laughing at actually was not people being addicted to drugs. It was this idea that we let people out so quickly. The whole point of sentencing reform is that we kept people in prison too long. Even the most conservative judges in the world have said we've incarcerated people too long, particularly black and brown people under Rockefeller drug policy and other policies were put in jail for sometimes decades for drug offenses. People aren't in jail too long. They're in jail too short. They're in jail too long. We need a reform that makes sense, and locking people up does not solve the problem. We need reform, we need investment, we need repair.
Gentlemen. I'll thank you both, Marc Lamont, Ben Ferguson. They debate, you decide. You can get in on the conversation, tweeting us using the hashtag NewDayCNN, or jump onto Facebook, leave your comments there.